I heard business, faith, and philanthropy. Do you believe that's where you are right now in your veterinary career? Is that what guides you?
That's what guides me. That's why I do this. Like, even on times I don't want to do this, I'm like, I have a purpose and I know why I'm here. I just kind of had that path my entire life. I made sure that was where I needed to be and prepared applications and stuff.
You can tell when the manager comes from outside the veterinary field, those are the practices that people are like, they don't get it. This manager does
Yeah.
not get it. Because the ones that do come from the field, they listen to what the higher ups say, but they still beat to their own drum in their own practice. And usually they're
Mm-hmm.
more successful and they have
Mm-hmm.
happier clientele, happier employees, happier veterinarians. And usually those are the ones that are hard to get relief shifts at. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I got Sul Ross State University's very own Lobo. How you doing? How you doing, Dr. Hope? How's everything?
I don't think about it like that, but that's an interesting way to start. Uh,
Well, when I saw you went to Sul Ross State University, I'm like, okay, I gotta look this up. So your
mm-hmm.
colors are scarlet and gray,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
you are the Lobo.
Lobos. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Well,
How? Mm-hmm.
how many students were at that school?
So the reason I picked it because it was a lot smaller than A&M actually, and so at A&M, like for some of your basics classes, you could be in a room of like 300 people, like scan your ID on the way in, like nobody knew your name. At that school, the biggest class size was 50 people, and that was intro to biology, and by the end there were like 20 of us if people stayed around. And my smallest class size was 4 people because that's what it took to make a class. So some of my like biochemistry and like advanced classes, there were 4 of us in the class, like literally 4 people. And so that's what I loved about it. And it was in a beautiful area of the state, like right next to the national park, like scenic tourist area. So
Are you the most famous alumnus to come out of that school?
I don't think so because I think we have like some like not senators, but we definitely have like some political people who came out of there. But I'm probably one of the like main veterinarians to come out of Sul Ross State for sure. So
Sul Ross State, and it's very rural, if I'm not
mhm.
mistaken, right out there. And while you were there, is that where you got involved in veterinary medicine?
Not quite. So I'm the I wanted to be a vet since I was a kid kind of person, and so I was 4 or 3, depending on which parent you ask. And I was at the zoo and was like, I'm going to be a vegetarian when I grow up, that kind of person. And they finally figured out that vegetarian meant veterinarian. And I grew up in Texas, so like you were not going to be a vegetarian in my family. But I grew up like in the practices we went to in high school. Grew up in a practice, but out at Sul Ross, that's where I really got into like role practice and mixed practice. I love my boss out there, Dr. Dotson. Her husband's a sheriff, so I couldn't do anything in that town without anybody knowing. But her deal was if my butt wasn't sitting in class, it was at her practice until I went home. And that meant on call, weekends, kennels, holidays. And I think that's where I fell in love with like role practice and mixed practice.
Yeah, it's rural practice is definitely different when it comes to standard of care, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Um, do you believe you're still bringing that rural standard of care practice background to where you are now?
I think so. I grew up in a very small town. I grew up outside a town of 1,000 people. And so there's small and then there's that, whatever that is.
Was there
And
too much
so,
traffic? Is that you're
yeah,
like,
oh,
oh,
well,
okay.
we had like one whole red light, in the town next to us. We had stop signs where I lived. But growing up like that, it's just a different mentality. Our dogs and cats I mean, they were part of the family, but not. It's just a different mentality. And it was like, do you want this dog or a dog? Like, a lot of my dogs didn't go live on a farm because we were in the country. They got hit by a car. That's what my parents told me because that was much more realistic. But I think I really take a lot of that into how I practice today. Spectrum of care, especially like if you want to
Yeah,
take home some pain meds and
that's
come
usually
back,
the stories I
okay.
get from the rural from the rural people, you know. Um, that's how my mom grew up in very rural Nebraska. I think that her town had 600,
Mm.
and they had animals, but those animals basically they didn't live inside the house; they lived in the town. So that animal was like kind of everybody's animal. Is that how it was
Mm.
by you?
Kind of. So we had like more like barn cats and outside cats, and then we always had like one dog that was outside, kind of roaming. It was ours, but like if it was dumb enough to get in the road, it wasn't meant to happen, sort of thing. So I think we really did care about our animals, but it was very much like they are outside, they are not inside. It took a long time to convince my dad we were going to have an inside cat. Actually, I was in high school by that point, but
Yeah, well, daughters usually have that effect on dads.
mhm.
It's pretty easy for a daughter to win an argument. I mean, we might give you a hard time, but when it comes to because I have three amazing daughters, yeah, I try to be tough, but it never works. It just doesn't. You give in. So what was it? What was the name of your first indoor cat?
What was my mom's actually? His name was Larry, and then the next one was named Joe. So, mhm.
Good, simple, good old names from rural Texas. I love it. I love it.
Larry.
Yeah. So when you were working in that practice in undergrad, do you believe the
Mhm.
doctor really gave you a strong foundation?
I think she did. It was more of tough love, maybe. She was very just blunt and to the point and get the work done. I think once a year, I would get her like to see her like thanking us for the work we did, and she would like shed like one single tear when she handed out like Christmas bonuses. But other than that, she was very just blunt and very I don't know, like she loved us and cared about her job, but it was just a different way of seeing it. And she also just really emphasized to me like I needed to do well in school, and she's the one who instilled in me like the need to gain business knowledge and management knowledge, because she would tell me do as much as you can, they'll never teach you, like you go find it. I don't know what I'm doing still, like she was running her own practice in the middle of nowhere, basically, and she started it from her garage. And so I think she really did give me a good foundation to start with.
How big? How many clients did she have? Do you even know?
I don't really know. There were only like two practices in that town, Alpine, Texas. And there were a lot of little towns that were like 30 minutes away or like 45 minutes away. People drove in like 2 hours off their ranch to get there, sort of thing. And so it's hard to say because we had, it was a mother son team by the time I got there. And so we had two doctors, and the other clinic had one doctor who had been established for 40 years type thing. And so we had a bigger client base for sure, but I'm not sure the numbers.
Wow, 2 hour drive. So how close was the closest specialty to there?
That's funny. Okay, so from Alpine to El Paso, which was where we would send people to have like a bigger clinic that would have access to like a scope, or I mean, we had an ultrasound, but it was laughable. So like a real ultrasound or to get an echo was 4 hours. But that wasn't specialty. And so to get to specialty centers, you would have to go to like Austin, San Antonio, which was, I want to say like 6+ hours. So yeah, it was us. Hmm.
Yeah, so you were the specialist. Well, that's awesome, though.
That's like, our clients realistically, occasionally they would go, to A&M, which was, I think like 8 hours or something crazy.
Hmm.
But it was us.
Wow, 8 hours to get to a specialist, 6 hours to get to a specialist. That is amazing. Hey, now do you still stay in contact with her at all?
I send her a Christmas card every year, and I also like text her every now and then.
Yeah,
But yeah, she's played a huge role, and her son's also a vet.
right.
But he was like a new grad or a recent grad when I got there, so I got to like watch that dynamic, which was also interesting. But I think she really set me up. Like she set really high standards, and you're going to be here at 10 at night, and you're going to be here at 6 the next morning, and you're going to work the holidays and count inventory and order for me, and I learned so much in that practice.
There are people that argue your generation doesn't really respect that or want to do that. Is that how you feel?
Like, doesn't want to like work hours like
Yeah.
that, or just doesn't
Yeah,
want
have that like strict regimen. This is what we're doing, being very you're going to be here at 10, you're going to be here at 6, you're going to do this. Basically, I don't want to say she was riding your butt, but she was keeping you in line, right?
to?
And a lot of people argue that your generation of veterinarians right now, they're not looking for that. Do you think
Yeah, I don't
your
know. I think I
classmates
was
would
raised.
respond well to that? How's that? Do you think your class?
I don't think my classmates would have. Most of them, I don't think would have enjoyed the experience that I had. But it also built me into who I am today, and it's also kind of how I was raised. Like the solution, like if you was something wasn't going well or you didn't have the grades you want, well, just work harder, put in more time, put in more effort, like seek, more knowledge. I was kind of raised in that mentality of like you're gonna work hard, and I don't know. I guess it was just how I was raised. It wasn't a thought of like, oh, on call, like, oh, that's part of it. Like a lot of my family's first responders, so we grew up with the radio sitting there, like waiting for the next emergency, and so I don't know that I thought it was so different until I realized, like, talking to classmates, I was like, oh, like they volunteered in clinics, but they weren't, like cleaning kennels and up at 10 at night with a colic horse. They were, seeing clinical appointments from 8 to 5 and that sort of thing.
You get to Texas A&M
Mm-hmm.
from rural life, rural undergrad, rural veterinary practice. How was that adjustment once you got to school?
It was hard. I started during COVID, so that was really hard because it was in person some, but they were, trying to figure out how to do this still in the midst of COVID. I was in Texas, and then that was a whole nother, regulations were more lax, but, how to provide the same education. And so it was really hard for me. I failed my first test of vet school because I was like, whoa, like this is really hard, trying to figure out how to study and, make friends and classmates and without having that connection. So I think that was pretty hard for me. And I was in a class of 150 something students when most of my classes before were like 20 students. So it was massive difference for me.
Can you walk us through that COVID education? When did lockdown start, and when did your first day of class start? Was it the same year?
Yeah, so I started in 2020. So I was accepted to vet school, or I had, interviews and everything. I got my official acceptance email because I don't mail it anymore on February 14th. So it was the best Valentine's gift ever. That year, I got married the last weekend of February, and the shutdown hit like right after I got married, and so it was like all across the state. And so I went from, I mean, just a lot of life change in that time. I was going to have the summer program where, like, if you're not from A&M, they let you do a summer anatomy program to, like, kind of get you ready because it's, like, a huge jump. And they canceled that, so I couldn't do that. So I started in August of 2020. So what that looked like was orientation was 6 feet apart and masks, and you were in a tiny group of like 10 people, and you were only allowed to speak to those 10 people or whatever because they were like limiting, one person got sick, the whole class wouldn't be at home. And it's a really hands-on semester usually. Anatomy, small animal anatomy is the biggest. So there's a joke that our class like just doesn't know anatomy because we didn't dissect anything. We had 2 hours a week in the lab instead of like, I think it's usually like 6 to 8 or something. And so we walked in, pointed at things and left, and all our tests were like on computers. So it was like pictures of things. And I'm a big hands-on learner. And so they tried what they could. We had some things in person, but a lot of it was on a computer screen, and I don't do well that way. And so it was pretty tough. I got the idea of it, obviously. But like a lot of clubs, was different, and a lot of the interaction parts, I would say.
How long were you in this hybrid type of education? Was it a year?
It was about a year. I'd say the first, like the fall of 2020 was probably like the most strict. And then spring of 2020, they actually did let us dissect an anatomy because it was large animal anatomy. So we actually did get to dissect things, which we thought was amazing. And our tests started being in person. But it was still different, like some of our physiology labs, like things that they could make online, they tried to. I would say it was probably my second year before it was like a lot more back to normal, I guess you would say.
So coming in your second year was kind of when you truly got to meet all your classmates.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got to know because I never have gotten into this discussion with anyone before. When you finally interacted starting your second year, were there already people dropping out? Were people already fried? Or was everyone all excited to finally get going?
I would say we actually lost a lot that first semester. I think we lost like, or in the first year, I think we lost 17 or so, which was, I mean, 10%. But we lost most in that first semester. Some people like deferred and was like, well, we'll just come back next year or, things like that. But I actually had probably one of my like closer classmates that I think we were anatomy partners or somehow, anyhow, multiple, but especially one that she failed out her first year, which it was just very unfair circumstances, that we were in. And so I kind of lost like a good friend there. I did have like a couple people, because if you're in, you live close by or, things like that, you figure it out. But I think it really did impact, having those groups of people because of the way we started. Even in like orientation, some groups stick together versus like our group didn't as much. And I also wasn't like from A&M. And so people already had kind of friend groups, to start with from undergrad.
Looking back at this whole COVID hybrid thing, is there things you believe that could have helped you a bit more, or you were lucky that it was your first year, not your third year?
I think I was lucky it was my first year for sure. I know people that it was their clinical year when COVID hit. So they either had, half a year in clinics and the rest was online, or like some of them were going into their fourth year and they didn't have a normal clinical year. And so I think if there was a part that I was to have been affected by, I'm glad it was my first year and it wasn't, when I was in clinics with patients and that sort of style of learning. But I think it definitely impacted the community aspect, because you don't have the same, when everyone's literally segregated like on purpose and like, well, your letter this or your lab group this, like you can't speak to each other. Um, it was hard, I think, especially with like all the clubs and organizations. I got super involved basically my spring of first year and then second year. I got super involved in clubs and organizations because I wanted that aspect a lot.
So, what was your favorite club that you, or what clubs were you in that really impacted your veterinary experience so far?
I would say there was like two really, gosh, there were so many. Probably the biggest one that I talk about is the VBMA or the Vet Business Management Association. So I was a officer for 3 full years, which was the most possible because it starts in like January. And so I was our innovation ambassador, which was a very unique position, and it allowed me to help a lot with like providing opportunities for students, but also just networking, industry networking, stuff like that. And so we pulled in a lot of outside speakers to kind of supplement the curriculum on like business management, like personal development sort of topics. And then probably the next one was Aggie's Fostering Hope, which was there before I started. So the name's kind of neat. And it was a shelter or like kind of a foster program we had for women escaping domestic violence situations because they couldn't take their animals with them. And there's so many studies out now about, one of the reasons people won't leave is their animals are threatened first. And so we did a lot of education because those animals do come into the vet clinic too. They still go to the vet, a lot of them. And so I helped. That was a big one. And then I would say the last one, there's just so many, it was probably like our CVF or our Christian Vet Fellowship group. And we had
Mhm.
weekly Bible studies. And the host's wife always made cookies. And so it was just that like one positive thing in the middle of the week. And so it was just a good community that I developed there of all like different years of vets. And then some of our professors would go, so we would get to like see who else in that community was there. And it was just a really good reminder of like why I was doing that, like throughout vet school.
So I heard business, faith, and philanthropy. Do you believe that's where you are right now in your veterinary career? Is that what guides you?
That's what guides me. That's why I do this. Like, even on times I don't want to do this, I'm like, I have a purpose and I know why I'm here. And it was definitely like, I didn't fall in, like, I wasn't just like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'll go to vet school. I just kind of had that path my entire life. I made sure that was where I needed to be and prepared applications and stuff. But like any clinic I'm at, there's always a place to serve, even if it's small things, in the day to day. I'm still looking for areas to be more involved now that I've like moved. So I'm in a different town. So I'm still looking for those like volunteer opportunities.
Now you're still rural, right? Your practice right now.
I'd say that it's more like suburban because we're outside of
Okay.
Waco. Um, but it's more the feel of the practice is definitely, I say it's more rural, like in the fact like we take walk-ins and we're like very like with the clients, it's like, oh yeah, sure, come in late or come in earlier. We'll see your emergencies. Like it's still that feel, but we have the ability to practice very high quality medicine. Like we have endoscopy, my boss has total hip replacements. Like, I mean, we use some crazy medicine, but we also have the ability to, the way we treat the clients, I feel like is more of a rural approach, more of a, I don't know, I guess a friendly, like it's not a doctor's office. It is, but it's how you treat the people too.
It's family. It's a
Mm-hmm.
family practice. Yeah. Those are the best. Those are the absolute best, hands down. I wish more early career grads would get that benefit when they graduate because those that's what I had, and the clients so appreciate what you're doing. And
Mm-hmm.
how was Thanksgiving and Christmas? A lot of treats being brought in.
Yeah, we get a lot of
Yeah.
snacks. We definitely get a lot of snacks. At my first practice, there's this one lady, Miss Vermillion. She always brought, and it was like every month, like it wasn't just the holidays. She brought these little like tiny muffin pecan things, and like we would fight over them. And even after her dogs passed, it was very sad. Like she had two, Jack and Chill together. She was like, "Don't worry, I'll still bake every month," and she still brought them to us every month. And she didn't even have a dog anymore. So those are the kind of clients that we get sometimes.
Yeah, those are the clients you need to remember when you have that client that comes in that's a little more difficult to deal with, a little less trusting of your recommendations. Probably been burned somewhere else most of the time. Um, do you have a hard time dealing with those types of clients? How do you think, because you had this hybrid education at the beginning, do you believe you learned enough soft skills to deal with those clients, or do you look back at your undergrad experience to learn how to talk to clients?
I think it's really a combination. And so I would say that some of the veterinarians I worked for, like during my like younger years, like even before undergrad, maybe weren't the best communicators. And so I think by seeing that, you're like, oh, I don't know if that's, or maybe there's a better way, but you don't know until you see it. So I think I had always looked to grow that aspect of myself because like my probably soft skills have grown so much more than even my medicine has in the last few years, just watching and wanting to learn. I would say in vet school, we actually had a class called like professional and clinical skills where we spent like 1 to 2 hours a week on professional skills. They would even like hire actors to come in or volunteers or whatever. And there'd be scenarios like they would video us and you would get graded on it. And they were super freaking stressful because it wasn't real, but it was. And so they really tried to teach like by the book, like, okay, signposting to change topics and build rapport. So like, here's ways to build rapport, the weather, the what shirt they're wearing, like they would give us different skills to use, but then you still had to apply those and like find your own style. So I think working with as many veterinarians as I have, I've used that to develop my style and like how I speak to clients and things like that.
Do clients still come in and say you're too young to be a doctor?
Oh, all the time. Definitely daily. Depends on how they ask it. I am like one of on the younger side of my classmates anyway. And so, and it took me 2 years to get in. So like I could have been younger, but it definitely, it used to bother me a lot more than it does now. So kind of depending on the client and like the vibes already, sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah, I just look really young for my age. Thanks for pointing that out. No, I just went to 9 years of college, so definitely can be a vet or something like that. But it depends on the client. Like sometimes it's these older farmers, and I walk out and they're like, "Where's the doctor?" I'm like, "That's." And sometimes I'm just a lot more blunt with them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's me today. You're welcome to wait till tomorrow when Dr. So and so is back, but I can help you right now. And sometimes they're like, okay, and then by the end they're like, I guess this girl's a vet. But sometimes they're still just not what they expect. So
Yeah. I don't know how many doctors I had that they always thought they were the technician or the assistant. And even if they wore a white coat and had a stethoscope, they would still say, "Oh, when's the doctor coming in?" Like they were in there for 20 minutes.
You're like, okay, what do you think I'm doing? I did wear a
Yeah.
white coat my entire first year, and I think that helped some. It at least made me feel better walking in because I worked in a practice where the veterinarians were at least 15 years out, like further than me. And so, like, in comparison, the technicians were almost all older than me, too. And so I did wear a white coat at first. I've now gotten rid of that, but I needed that at first.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Well, I always told my associates, just go in there and make a joke of it. Have fun with them with it. You know, you do, they don't mean to be insulting. They just think that you look young and take that as a compliment. You know, but I know some young associates that get really offended with that, and you can't. It's just it's ignorance on their part. But do you still wear a name tag? Do you have, like, in California, it's law that we wear a name tag?
I don't actually. I did have one that said like Dr. Hope, and I would put on my white coat. And I've since, when I was doing relief, I would wear it a lot more. And I still do like when I'm doing relief shifts. But usually I walk in, like part of our training in vet school is actually, hi, I'm Dr. So and so. Hi, Mrs. Smith. I see you brought Fluffy. Like you had to say all those points. I don't always address the client by name, which is something I'm always working on. But usually I say, hey, I'm Dr. Hope, and I like greet the dog. So at least we start, we're like, okay, that's who this lady is, to start with. But I'll still say that, and then they'll still question it later. So I'm like, okay, well, anyways, like here we are.
Yeah, you sometimes you just can't beat stupid. I mean, and I don't mean to say that in a mean way, but you just cannot. You just can't do it. When you were coming out of school, what requirements did you have for your first job? Did you have a list?
Oh yeah, I'm a list person. And so I actually went through a divorce my fourth year of vet school that I was not anticipating. And so I had like picked out practices, spent years in those practices, multiple externships, all of that, had a list of what fit what I needed. So I kind of had that all planned. And then I had to pivot and only had like a few months to make that decision. And so when I made the new list, it was a very different list because I didn't have the time to like spend weeks in a practice and, that sort of thing. You can't change during your fourth year your externships like super easily. It's like a whole thing. So I couldn't change those. And so the main things on the list were how they took care of like the staff and their clients. So kind of culture, but I don't like those big topic words that everybody uses. So how they took care of people and treated their staff and their clients. If our values aligned, and so there's a lot of practices where either how it's managed or who owns it, just the values were not going to align. And then making sure that I had a mentor there that I could learn from, that I felt like we kind of were on the same page, or at least kind of got along well enough personality wise that I could learn from them. I think those were probably the biggest things that I had.
So you've been out a year and a half. How
Mm-hmm.
many practices are you on your second practice now?
I'm on my second practice officially that I've been full time employed in, but I was a relief vet for a solid 4 months in the middle. And I had another practice that fell through kind of in the middle of that. And so I've worked in, I mean, gosh, 20 plus, 30 plus practices so far. And that's really been eye opening to see just the differences and different people and management styles.
Oh, now, yeah, there because I wanted to go to the it fell through. When you did
Mm-hmm.
20 different practices, were they all private or some private, some corporate?
A mix, but most of the relief practices I worked in were corporate, because those were the ones who were like posting on the relief like companies I was going through. But the ones that I still do now, the one that I mainly go back to is a private practice. It was like a word of mouth. This rep knew me from, sort of thing. And those are the ones I tend to go back to more.
Do you find there's a difference? I know you don't like the word culture, but do you find it's different how they're treated, how the employees feel about the practice, how the clients feel about the practice? Because I tend to, because I do relief now too, because I missed it. So I get
Mm-hmm.
back in there and, you know, it's cool when you get to do relief because you can choose. You could be like, oh, I'll never go back there again. Oh, really like that. But you really don't know until you go in there the first time. But you can almost sometimes cut the tension with a knife when you walk into some of these practices.
You can, and I think that I don't know, growing up, like I had a very certain, like hard view on corporate practices just because I grew up in private practices. And, with those vets who had a very strong belief, I try to be open minded all through vet school. And there have been some corporate practices that I've been in that I've been like, oh, wow, okay, you can't like really tell. But then there's a lot you walk in and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, not just being a vet today, I also have to, like, there's just so much going on and the clinic's literally falling apart, it feels like, and the clients see it and they're telling you how different it is. Where's Dr. Smith, who owned it for 20 years? And so I think that it really depends on the management at the local level as well, because some corporate practices, some Banfields even that I've worked in, it doesn't feel like that because of the local management. But some places you walk in, especially the ones without strong management or lack thereof because they can't keep employees, it feels very different. And I'm like counting down the hours, like, when can I go home? I'm not going back here. And I've had enough of those experiences, I think, to try to weed out future ones.
Yeah, yeah, very smart. Make sure you do weed those out.
Mm-hmm.
There's times I walk into practices and it's almost like a therapy session for the staff.
Mm-hmm.
Like they just they just let everything out on what's going on, and I have to 1000% agree with you. It's more the local and the practice manager themselves is probably the
Mm-hmm.
biggest piece that I can key in on that makes a practice feel or corporately owned practice feel more homely than not. You can tell when the manager comes from outside the veterinary field, those are the
Mm-hmm.
practices that people are like, they don't get it. This manager does
Yeah.
not get it, and because the ones that do come from the field, they listen to what the higher ups say, but they still beat to their own drum in their own practice. And usually they're
Mm-hmm.
more successful and they have
Mm-hmm.
happier clientele, happier employees, happier veterinarians. And usually those are the ones that are hard to get relief shifts at.
Mm-hmm. Because yep, they're filled. So.
Yeah. The perpetual relief ad are the ones you got to run away from. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you see a relief ad all the way across, like if you choose any day you want to work and they have a shift available, those are the ones you
Mm-hmm.
want to avoid, in my opinion. Now
And
I could be wrong. Or you could go in there and ask for a lot more money than what they're willing to pay you.
that's true.
And then you
Well, there's some
just
clinics I've been to that survive on relief only, which is wild to me because there's no consistency. There's no. It's wild. But I've been in practices that survive on relief only. There is no regular doctor, and it's a lot of times it's a corporate practice. But I've even been in some where they go from like they were a corporate practice, they've been on relief only, and they're selling it back to a private individual, which I didn't know was possible,
for
because of
pennies on the
how
dollar. For pennies on the
poorly it
dollar.
was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There are a lot of, corporate that sell off because they just couldn't run it because the spreadsheet didn't explain why things were going wrong there. And it's usually a people problem. And
Mm-hmm. Or just some of them are in towns where like that's some of the smaller towns I've been in, and I'm like, this model does not work. You can't just go up 10% a year, or like this does not work with the clientele you have. The way they were trying to blanket changes.
are clients complaining about the cost of care in rural Texas?
Oh yes, always. So there's probably very few appointments a day where they're like, "Oh no, doc, just do it." And those are the ones where I'm like, "Oh, let me make sure we're all cool with the plan. Because if you tell me don't do it, like just do it, won't worry about it." I
Yeah.
figured out what that means. But some of them literally they are the clients that they're like, "Well, my card's on file. Y'all know to run it," and so you don't have to worry about okay, that whole conversation, it's okay, I need to do X, Y, and Z for Fluffy today. And they're like, go right ahead, I'll be in the lobby. And you get it done. But I would say the practice I work at now, there's a lot more practices in like the big city next to us. And so we're not the cheapest practice in the area, but that's not my boss's goal, to be the cheapest practice with what we can offer. And so it's tough because you're trying to balance, oh, well, I only have $200 today. Okay, well, the sick exam fee is 75. So, like, that is a big part of what we're here. And then you're trying to balance. But our practice, I would say, it's not like they've jumped up on prices year after year either. They've been very slow and just following, as Apoquil goes up, we go up. It's not like they're just dropping these big changes at the first of the year.
You've posted that your first week, I think you said something about it being a roller coaster ride, and I hit the ground running. What were some of the first in the first few weeks that you can remember?
Oh, as a vet,
Yeah.
like first, oh my gosh, it was just a lot. I started out at an even smaller town, is where I actually started practicing, and it was I would say probably the fanciest clinic in town, the newest building, and the one with the best medicine, which said a lot because I felt like when I walked in and the standard I was taught in school was so much higher than that practice. So that was another adjustment. But I started out with a more empty schedule because my boss had been established. So, of course, like her clients wanted to see her. And so what I got was all the same day sick and all the new clients. New client can also equal second, third, or fourth or fifth opinion. And so that was, I think, just a lot at once to figure out, okay, where does this live in the cabinet? Oh, but also where am I going? Oh, wait, how's the flow of this or that? And I had some amazing technicians, 3 licensed technicians in that hospital, which is impressive for Texas, where you can do a lot just off the street without letters. And so I had a lot of guidance there from them. They were trying to help me, like, well, you sure you don't want this medication? And I'm like, I guess I might if you're asking me. But I would say it was a roller coaster. Just there's so much to figure out all at once. And I dived right in like with appointments because that's what I wanted. I didn't want to sit and watch somebody for 2 weeks, or that's what I thought. But it was definitely a roller coaster. Like I jumped right into surgery, dentistry, all types of appointments, wellness, sick, mainly sick, working those up.
And the mentorship from that veterinarian, was it good, bad? I mean, obviously from the networking side, it wasn't good because she obviously wasn't telling clients, hey, this is my new associate. I really trust her. She's part of this practice now. So if I'm not here, you can see her. Or if I don't have appointments available, you can see her. Or was it
Mm-hmm.
more like, okay, you're on your own, go?
I'd say it was a mixture. That practice, my fourth year, I had to pick a practice, and so I was really very like in prayer about like, I will go wherever I need to go. Like, I just need to know where it is and picking a practice that aligned, I would say like that practice fit with my values and like with the culture and how they treated the team were probably bigger than the mentorship aspect. But it was also compared to my options, like I was led where I needed to go, and I truly believe I was meant to be there. But I would say it was a mixture on the mentorship side because my boss was 15 years out of school, And then the only other vet there, he was a previous owner. So he was 46 years out of school. And he was there a half day a week or so, or supposed to be a whole day, but sometimes he would like pat me on the back and be like, I think I'm gonna head home today. And I love him because together we had 47 years of experience. That's what we told ourselves together. And he was just an old cow vet. And so I think that I saw that. I was like, okay, there's like two vets there that are much more experienced than me. But what I didn't look at was the gap because between new grad and 15 years out, we also all went to different universities. So, like, the curriculum was different. There's a lot of differences there. And so, the knowledge I graduated with was what I was taught, which is don't use metronidazole, or that's just like one of the easiest ones to give an example for in most acute GI cases. And so we definitely had some differences in like what I was taught versus what was standard, even like for the area, I guess, what was standard of care. Like I wanted to take an ear swab on all the ears they saw to like prove if there was infection. But some of the clients were like, no, old doc so-and-so just shoved some ointment in there and we're good for a month. Like, okay. But I would say that my boss was definitely available as far as if I needed help on a case in the moment, I could go to her and like ask her advice. But I don't know that she necessarily pushed me as far as like pushed me to, hey, did you offer this diagnostic? Or, hey, you should like go call IDEX and get their advice on this blood work for like the next further step and things like that. I was very independent. And so I kind of just did my own thing and like went for direct help. But I would say she more helped me not on the medicine side as much as just like giving me suggestions for like how to work with the staff and things like that.
Do you think that unicorn exists where the culture, the mentorship, and the medicine are all at the level you believe that it should be?
Um, I think that it does, but there's always gonna be like something that you have to sacrifice on. So like even the practice I'm at now, there's like little things that I've sacrificed, of like things I would want. But it's again the practice I'm meant to be at right now. And then if you're not growing in some areas, you're growing in others. So there's always room to grow and learn, even if it's not maybe in the area your last job was. And so I think that in this practice, I've also been able to find that as much as possible.
So you've also said that you got to a breaking point almost, correct?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I was like burnt out so many times my first year. And then eventually I did another podcast the other day and I listened back at myself and I said that I was burnt to a crisp, which I guess is a new level. I definitely like went through that in my first year. I don't know why that day I said I was burnt to a crisp. But that's how I felt. Like I didn't want to be a vet anymore, which was really tough for me to work through because it was my passion and my calling in life. And I still believe that. But in that moment, that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to go to work. I wasn't compassionate. I kind of just had to get through that time. And I think that I'm still learning how to set boundaries to not end up in that place again. But I think it's really tough because it's such a unpredictable field. And
What
I've
was the biggest
never,
driver? What do you think? Was it accumulation of things, or was there one particular thing that really stood out to you now that you look back that was the driver to where you were burnt to a crisp?
I think it was multiple small things that all added up. But I think the biggest times that I felt burnt out were times when my boss was on vacation, which she needed to go, to conferences or go on vacation with her family. But during those times, the first time it was a week and we still had a manager. And so there's like less on me. I'd been out for, I think, 4 months at that point. And so of course I was confident. So oh, it'll be fine. Like, we'll get through it. It'll be okay. Well, it's fine until like that, I think it was that first time I had like an IMHA patient who was, gosh, like 150 pounds or something that I was trying to like coordinate. And I had a parvo puppy, which I know he's the one trying to bark in the background. And because I kept him. And then I was just going through a lot of like intense cases, which you can't predict. But probably the time that I burnt to a crisp, as I said the other day, was it was in January because my boss went to VMX, and then she went to Disney with her family after, it's like right next door, which she really needed, which was great. And so it was just me, and then our semi-retired vet. He was there, I think, like one morning out of that time, and it was 12 days she was gone. But we also didn't have like a full-time manager at that point, and so that was a really intense, like 11, 12 days. And I was also on call because we did that too. And so I think it was just a combination of kind of all the small like management responsibilities I'd picked up slowly over time that added up. And then also trying to manage intense cases. Like that time it was like day 2. I was cutting a C-section at lunch that I needed to cut like hours before, like heart rate's dropping, expensive Frenchie, of course. And then I had a DK, my first one, dying behind me while my technicians Googled things because I didn't know how to manage that. And then I was also feeling questions about like ordering these. They're paper bags we put our prescriptions in for people to pick them up. And in that moment, that receptionist, it was really important to her to make that correct decision. And she was needing my help, and I was just like, screw the paper bags, like I don't care. But I think that was like part of it. And then later that week, I was doing a dental on like a trash mouth dog with like breaking all the roots because I'm still learning my dentistry. And I was just frustrated, and it was lunchtime, and we had a meeting, like a staff meeting, which they were very strict about, like, okay, everybody's going to come to the staff meeting, like, as a team. They got us lunch, was a big thing. And the part-time manager, like, kept checking in, like, hey, are you ready? Like, we got to go. The dog's under anesthesia. And then finally she asked, like, are you okay? And I lost it, and I was hyperventilating over this little dog with broken roots that I was still trying to get out. And I was like, no, but like nobody else can do this right now. Like I was the only person. You can't call somebody and be like, hey, can you help remove this broken root like through the phone? So I think it was like at that point that I was just like, I'm done. And I think it was a combination of things, just not setting boundaries, but also like taking too much on and trying to be everything for everybody, which that's how I am in life. And I think after that point, it took me weeks to want to be a vet again, like weeks to, just like find that passion again, and enough good clients to remind me why I was doing it, and enough, just the team supporting me.
What brought you back to your passion?
I think it was just
time. Yeah, rest.
It was time, and time. But I kind of didn't have the option of like rest exactly because like I still had to work. I was still there. I was still on call. I still had to do things, and so I think it was time. But I also I found in my first job that I was missing kind of the large animal aspect. That I was growing it in that practice like by myself, which was hard. But I didn't have that time like out in the field, like feeling like I was a vet, which is large animal medicine's part of what does that for me. And so I found a practice that was like an hour away, and they, had a lot of large animal opportunities. So I called them, and I was like, hey, like I'm a real vet, but can I like come hang out with y'all? And they were like, this is weird, but I guess so. And I had kind of gone to them like throughout the year, but after I was really burnt out, I still kept going there. And so I think being around them and like seeing 5 other vets who wanted to be vets and like who could kind of give me a little bit of advice was helpful. And when I was with them, I didn't have to be the vet. Like I wasn't doing paperwork. I wasn't in charge of communicating to clients or running the case. I was just there and like learning and seeing them, I think kind of reminded me like, oh, okay, yeah, like I still want to do this. I'm still interested. I still want to learn. But it did just take time, I think, too.
How much, because where my next stage of my research is going, or my big passion project is going to be moral injury. Did you feel as if when you were burning out, you were going against morals that you believed were right? And by that, obviously you thought you were seeing too many patients. Was there ever a financial burden put on you? Did the female doctor ever say, hey, you need to bring in more money? Did she ever throw that on you?
So I was on like a pro-style model in that practice, but I would say that kind of in the way it was set up and the way it was run, there was a lot that was put under my boss and not under me. And so I was never one to like check all the invoices, and like I was just focused on the medicine. And so I did still have my base salary. And even like when she was gone for a longer period of time, I would get so close to like meeting that number. But she never, I would say, directly said that. Like she would encourage me to like make sure we're running diagnostics, like remember the tools we have. But she was never like pushing me monetarily, unless I was trying to do large animal stuff. And then she would remind me like how non financially sensible that was, just because it isn't. You can't make, when you're driving to a farm call to do $200 of work and drive, like it's just not feasible. But it's what I love doing. And so she didn't do that, but we had a lady who ran our production, and then she would come once a month and like show it to me. And she was more, she did this with a lot of other clinics, and so she knew like new grads. So she would be like, hey, by the way, we have a laser machine, you haven't really used it yet, like just like here's, do you want some CE on that, like how can you use it more? Or she would point things out like you're not doing as many dentals as you used to, like she would kind of help with that some. But I did not feel that pressure. I did like personally, because I was on, a single income starting from scratch. My divorce was finalized the August after I graduated. And so like I financially literally started from scratch, but at least I was a vet at that point. And so I had that income. But I don't feel that was a huge burden, I guess, to me.
Your big thing is guiding, not grinding.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe the profession is, I don't want to say failing new career professionals, but do you feel that we're messing it up pretty good?
I think in a lot of situations, yes. And I don't know that it's always intentional. With my first job, I don't feel that it was intentional, like what I went through. I think it was just probably a combination of things. But it was like, oh, well, she's doing okay, and so it was, I kept taking on more and I kept seeing more patients. And I never said no and set boundaries. And so I just kept doing more, and I was, grinding away. But I think that kind of depending on the practice that people are going into, I have a lot of horror stories from my classmates, or just, mentees of mine, where they ended up in places where they were a number, and it was how many numbers can you see and how many you need to do more of this or be faster or do more or, push this more. Or, and I hate to say it, it happens on the private practice side too, but a lot of more corporate practices, the numbers are important, especially with their goals. And so just because a practice needs a vet doesn't mean they need a new grad, because we are not out of the gate producing the most, seeing the most. Like that takes time and guidance. And even if you're putting in that time, maybe that new grad doesn't stay with you. Maybe they then go somewhere else. But it's like for the profession. So how we, I think, handle new grads and even recent grads who didn't do well in their first practice, I feel like that's the group of people that even need it more to make sure that they don't leave the profession. So just making sure that that time is spent for the profession. It's not just about that one person, because we keep making more vet schools and graduating more veterinarians, and it doesn't seem to be solving the problems we have.
Yeah, there's a lot more to come too. My question always is, who's going to teach these students? That's the one. That's the one answer I seem to not get. And then once they get out, who's going to take them under their wing and teach them all the lessons that aren't taught in a textbook? Those are the big ones. So if you looked at the systemic problem, what are the two things you probably would want to take care of first?
I think maybe one of the biggest things is how the profession is viewed these days, which, I mean, growing up, I thought being a veterinarian was the best thing ever. And I grew up on reading James Herriot and, all of that, but that's not where we're at anymore. And I think that the clients, a lot that I see now, they've been to another vet and they've been, I don't know if burn's the word, but, they come in and they say phrases like, well, that vet was just money hungry, or that vet was just, I mean, they say these things to me and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I really care about you and Fluffy, but
that's a red flag though. That's a red flag. If a client comes in and that's what they say, unfortunately, that's a red flag.
It is, but there's, I guess I'm not giving as many good examples, but like some clients have had bad experiences. That was just what I was told
Yeah.
literally Friday. That was like, okay, that's a quote right there. But they haven't either. They don't have a good view of the profession for like some reason, but they're not always bad clients or don't want to take care of their animal. Sometimes they just need more education or other things. So I think a big problem we face is how the profession is being viewed. And I think that a lot of the ownership changes have impacted that, where a lot of practices are being managed differently or prices are going, there's just different things that are not how they were, I would argue, 20, 30 years ago. So I think that's a big issue is how our clients are viewing veterinary medicine. There's so much online, like, oh, well, don't go to the vet. This will heal your dog, or don't, my vet told me this and they're wrong. Like, there's just so much out there about, like, against veterinary medicine, but also just misinformation. But then I think the second issue is definitely how we're making the practice, like, being in practice sustainable, whether that's for vets who are already out and they're in practice and making sure that they're still fulfilled and supported, but then also on the new graduate side. So I know you talk a lot about vet schools and like who they're picking and how that changes things. But I think it's also how vet schools like nurture students and prepare them for where they're going, just as much as it is like who they're choosing.
So who do you think needs to be held accountable for all these systemic issues you believe is leading to early career professionals having trouble?
I mean, it's just a combination of factors. I don't think it's like one person or one like thing to point fingers at. I think a lot of it comes down to the individual. So like me as a vet student, or how was, I preparing myself? Like, was I doing my due diligence and picking a practice? Was I setting boundaries? Like, I can't blame it all on myself, but I try to look internally and see like how I could have done better. But then there's also the aspect of, I mean, everyone plays a role in this situation. The vet schools play a role, your mentors play a role, your practice, the practice owner. It's a combination of factors, but I think a big part has to be the individuals as they come out of vet school. Like I could have just decided in that moment where I was burnt to a crisp, like, well, I just don't want to be a vet anymore. I'm going to go do something else. Like I could go do something else. I could go work in industry. I could go back to being a technician. Like I could go do a lot of things. But I chose to continue and be in this profession because of my passion and my mission in doing it. So I think having that strong foundation is what kept me here. But I don't know what that solution is for other people.
When you look into the future, because I know you love being a veterinarian, but you also love innovation. You love, I want to, well, since you're on the business side, I can say, I can kind of hear you kind of want to be a little bit of a disruptor, which is awesome. What do you believe you would change to make sure that a great majority of early career professionals don't go through what you went through so quickly?
Man, that's hard. I think that probably having more, I don't know if it's like more experience in practices to really see what you're getting into. I don't know how to enforce that, but I mean, when I applied, I just had to have like a minimum of, I think, at like 1,000 hours or something in a veterinary setting. Well, that could have meant that I was at the front desk filing, like putting files away and answering phones. So I don't know how to like hold the standard, but the fact that I was in a practice where I was on call and was getting up in the middle of the night and having clients scream at me, and like I feel like I had a really good view of what the field is, and I don't know that that's true for everyone. So I think that if we could somehow, it would be somewhere in the application process, but assess like, okay, what was that experience? Like, not to scare people away from applying, but it's vet med is not for people who love animals, like only. Like that's, I don't do this because of my love of animals. I didn't stick in this because of my love of animals. So I think somehow trying to assess
Okay,
what.
then stop right there. Why did you stick in it? What if it wasn't for the love of animals? I'm just playing devil's advocate right now. Why did you stick in it? What is it about the profession that just keeps you going every day?
It's my calling, so I really feel like that's where the Lord like wants me in my life, because I get to serve animals, but really I'm serving people through their animals. And so it's not just, it's how I serve my community. So some people go to other countries to do that. Some people you can serve as an accountant. I mean, I am serving those clients through helping Fluffy stop vomiting, or through helping Fluffy skin because that's a huge stress on their life. So it's helping serve people, and it's just through the animals. And I do love animals and like have a passion for that. But I think that I don't know if I could make it day to day if it was only about my love of animals, because I euthanize animals almost daily. I, have to make really tough decisions and financial decisions, and it's also my like staff and the team I work with, and that's why I loved Relief in one part, because I got to work with so many different teams and kind of just having that positive attitude I try to have most days of like, I'm just here to serve people. And so like, sure, I'll see the walk-in and, I just want to help people. I think that's what kept me in it, was having that grounded belief. But even when I was super burnt out, it was really hard to hold on to that because I didn't feel like I was my best self to serve people. I wasn't who I needed to be to have that level of compassion.
How much did your faith help you with your burnout and your moral distress that you were going through?
It was crucial. Yeah, it was crucial because I think that I grow, or I don't know, I think everybody does. You grow so much more in your foundational beliefs and in your faith and your relationships during times of trouble and hardship. Like, it's being a Christian is not like roses and, easy. And there's, I don't know why, but some people, I don't know, that's how it looks like to some people. And I'm like, that is such a lie. But it's like through those troubles and hardships that I've grown and been more confident that like, okay, well, this is where I'm meant to be. I need to figure out like what I need to do to get back to where I, feel more comfortable going to work and having that support. But it also helps me understand people so much better because I've been through a lot in my life where my world was falling apart around me, but people around me didn't know. So I think it helps me a lot to be understanding of clients. So when they come in and say, my last vet was this, or yada yada, or complaining about this or that, or complaining about the prices, or just different things they complain about or get upset about. It's not about me. There's something else going on. A lot of the clients who are screaming at me, I just listen and okay, well, like let's move forward. It's not like a personal attack. A lot of times we've all got crap going on in our lives, and I try to use that to help me be more understanding of people.
Why didn't people know what was going on? Are you a very keep it close to the belt type person, or were you just too proud to talk to someone about all the issues you were having?
Probably a combination of both. So I went through my fourth year. It was like 6 months into my divorce before I told anybody. I think I like two classmates knew. I wore my wedding ring. Like I showed up every day like it never happened, and kept up my social media. I mean, literally nobody knew at graduation. People were like, whoa, what? Like, hold on, what? Like they didn't know. And so I, went to my pastor and I had a counselor and things like that. And but it took me a lot of time to even tell some of my family. And so I think that situation taught me that you don't know what's going on in people's lives. You don't know. All my social media, like I still had our posts, like everything was up. Here's what I'm doing today. Like never stopped any of that. And people didn't know. Like, and so if I could do that during one of the hardest parts of my life, like what, you don't know what's going on with the technician you work with. Like I like to think I know these people, but we don't really know. And so I think that I forget what the question was anymore, but I don't know. Just that taught me that like I'm a very private person anyway, but it's also like that's my private like stuff. And so like being at work, like that's my job. That's what I'm doing too. But I think you have to separate that sometimes, especially we work in such an emotional field that sometimes you have to make that separation. So I try to do that.
Why didn't you talk to anyone about what you were going through with your burnout?
So I did talk to some people, but for a while it took me time to realize what it even was. So like one of the first times I was burning out, I made a LinkedIn post and it just said something about like this field is so exhausting. There's like mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion, ethical, moral. Like I listed like every type I could think of, but I didn't know that was burnout. And I, watched all the CE and the wellness and this and that. Like I listened to all of that, but I didn't recognize it. And I think it takes a lot to recognize what that burnout means to each person. Because to some people it might mean something different. So that time I didn't really reach out because I didn't know, but I did reach out once I was just like, I'm done. Like I don't want to be a vet anymore. And I think it's hard for people to support you through that if they haven't been through it. So like even my family, they supported me, but they didn't know what that meant. So they're like, well, you've just always wanted to do this. You're just tired, or they just didn't know how to help. So I think it's really tough. But I did have at that point a mentor, like through Mentor Vet. So I did that program, but I had one through like AVMA's version, and she helped me a lot through it because she, is a vet but also like not connected to my practice. So she helped me see a lot of things. And I think that she was crucial during that time because she could help me see that and like help me with those resources.
What do you believe is your biggest fear right now? Do you fear that you're going to hit that burnout stage again? Do you fear that this profession is going to become too much for you? Or do you fear that you'll never find that perfect practice to be at?
That's a hard question. I think some of my fears now is more that like there's certain areas of my practice that I'm really growing, like on the equine side, or with a lot of my workups now I'm like growing in how I do those. But there's some areas that I'm not doing, like I'm not doing as much surgery now as I used to do, or dentistry. And so I'm always worried that I'm losing skills or that I'm not like growing as much as I should. But that's just like the type A person in me that like wanted to get like the best grade and like accomplish those things when it's not a linear trajectory. Like I'm growing in some areas, but not others. But I think I'm also worried about, the practice I'm in right now. I love this practice and I know I'll be here for a while, but if something changes, like I'm so afraid of like trying to find a practice again. Like this is exhausting experience to go through it. And so I don't know that I'll find another practice. I think I might just go buy one and go through that route versus trying to find another one because it is exhausting. So, but I'm always afraid I'm not going to be ready for that. But it's just got to do it. But I think probably just like fear of like not growing as much as I need to in all areas.
Why are you not ready?
It's not that I'm not ready. Like I've done so many like business programs and I didn't go get my MBA, but I might do that online eventually. And so what I want to do is I want to focus on the medicine and be a lot more confident and comfortable in these workups. You have to do 5 of one kind of case to be like, okay, I'm not checking my notes anymore. Or there's still things that I'm doing like, tubing a horse, which to my boss is like, do that in my sleep. Well, I still have to really focus on how to do it. And, you have to go through certain numbers, I feel like, of case examples to feel comfortable. And I want to have more of that and be able to have a clinic that pushes me, like my current practice, to make sure I am growing and like expanding that side before I go into a practice where I plan to buy like an existing practice, probably in a small town, probably a single vet practice. And so I'm not going to have that same opportunity when I'm also, doing payroll and the schedules, like doing other things. I want to make sure I'm a lot more grounded in my medicine first.
Well, yeah, I mean, you love being in the innovations hub. You got to remember, a lot of these AI programs are taking care of all those mundane tasks that you just said you're going to hate doing. So don't.
That's true.
So, I mean, when it comes to payroll and all that stuff, you can hire someone. You could get an AI platform to do it. There's absolutely no reason you shouldn't own a practice. It's one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done, other than being married and having children, because it is your baby, right? It is your baby, and I will let you know that when you have the managerial, entrepreneur, and doctor cap on, you can kind of dilute out your burnout, which was kind of nice. So once that was taken away from me, and I was just a doctor, the burnout hit me like a ton of bricks because I couldn't go and say, oh, let me go look at credit cards. Oh, let me go and write an email. Oh, let me go and do this. I was just in rooms, and I got to the point where I couldn't get out of rooms quick enough. I would have such anxiety being in a room. Like I would like be thinking in my head instead of like interacting, like, how do I get out of here?
Yeah.
So I just don't want you to hit that again. And I also want to talk to you about the business side, but that's going to have to be another podcast because this one's so deep. I want to thank you for opening up though. I'm just curious, in your vet school class, how many people out of 150 came in a serious relationship or married?
I don't know, but is definitely, I feel like, more than I expected. Like we had quite a few of my classmates got married like the summers, like in between vet school. And then of course we had a couple classmates like married each other. But then a ton of them now, it's like after graduation, you know what I mean? If you pull up Facebook, somebody's getting married or having a baby, which is awesome to see.
Yeah. How many of them actually lasted?
I think a lot less. Yeah, a lot. It's a really tough profession to be with. Mine was, I feel like, a really like different situation than maybe the traditional like reasons, but I feel like it's a very like veterinarians are very hard people to be married to.
We're very stubborn. We are very stubborn
and determined, and we are workaholics, and you know what I mean, type A, and like to control things, and you know what I mean, like we're tough people to put up with. So I think it definitely takes the right person.
Well, I was definitely one of the ones that was lucky enough to marry a classmate. So, it made it easier. It definitely made it easier. She was the workaholic. She was I have to get straight A's if I'm going to be a good doctor. And she's an amazing, amazing veterinarian. But I was the one where C equals DVM. I'm not embarrassed to say, I graduated in the middle of my class and I was very successful. But, those are things that all come into play. And I think people need to, hear stories like this because your story, you're in rural Texas. You came from rural Texas. You went into big city life when you went to College Station, and then you went back to rural Texas again. You got screwed out of a practice that you thought was going to work out for you. And we didn't even hit that because I was going to save that for the business piece.
Okay. There you go.
So that's going to be part 2 to all the listeners out there. I am going to have Hope back because this story, when you told me this story when we first met, Hope, I was like, I wonder how many other veterinarians this happens to, early career professionals. So it's it happens too. I mean, and just because people are veterinarians doesn't mean they're always trustworthy or that of integrity. We'll just say that. So if anyone wants to any of the listeners have any questions for you, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
Probably through Instagram. So I take a lot of messages through there. So it's hope.dvm24. And so that's where I'm at on like Facebook and LinkedIn and all that. I actually do a lot more on LinkedIn. It's not a platform a lot of people use, but I found I have more veterinarians that support me on that platform than anywhere else. And so I do a lot through there too. So, but Instagram seems to be the most popular place to reach out.
I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best. It's it's not used enough by our profession because I think that's where you can really cut through all the fancy like videos of people dancing around with e-collars as tutus and really, get down to the nitty gritty for people who really care about this profession. And I'm not saying those other people don't. I'm not. But I believe that we need to have some crucial conversations. And I think LinkedIn is definitely the place to be for that. And to all the listeners, if you have any questions and you can't get a hold of Hope, I just send them my way and I'll be more than happy to get a hold of her for you. Other than that, I am going to have Hope again. We're going to go into the business side because she did some pretty cool things. So stay tuned for that. And we'll talk to you all next time here on Irreplaceable Truths. Thank you, Dr. Hope.
Thank you. Happy to have you.